With us now, Republican Senator from South Dakota, Senator John Thune. John, how are you doing? Good to see you.
I'm doing okay. Good, Joe. You?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
I'm surviving the winter.
Oh my gosh! I was about to complain about the bad winter, but you're from South Dakota, so I'll keep my mouth shut.
It's been one for the record books.
Has it really, up in South Dakota as well?
Yeah, I mean the number of days where the highs don't get above zero. You know, just the consistently bone-chilling cold has really been pretty extraordinary.
How's business in South Dakota?
Good, really good.
What's unemployment rate?
3.6.
Oh my gosh! And why is
we're not as good as North Dakota, where it's 2.6, but it's and they've got the energy thing going up there, but we've got financial services, healthcare, some real drivers of our economy, and real very favorable business economic climate there.
Do you get any positive impact from what's going on in North Dakota?
We do.
Economically?
We do.
What do you get? How does North Dakota impact South Dakota?
Quite a spillover. I mean, the trucks are going 24/7 from Rapid City up to the Williston Basin. We've got contractors, electrical, all kinds of guys that are doing work up there. So there's a ripple effect that we're experiencing that's a benefit. We don't get the direct benefit from it. I kid my friends from North Dakota that someday we're going to repay them for stealing the territorial capital from South Dakota during the territorial days by horizontally drilling into their oil and pulling it down into South Dakota.
Isn't it almost surreal that America's energy revolution, and as I say on this show all the time, an economic revolution that is going to impact the way our children and possibly grandchildren live economically, started in the Dakotas.
I know, it's amazing, and there were some people who had the foresight to make the investment up there, and the resource coming out of there now is just stunning, and it's going to be there for a long time.
Look, the geographic pivot not only will impact our kids economically, will radically change, if not transform, the conversation around national security and how we spend, where we spend, and where we allocate resources. I'm a supporter of the Keystone Pipeline as this conversation evolves a bit, and I'm hopeful that the White House will pay attention to these new reports. I disagree with the numbers coming from some of my Democratic friends that it creates a paltry number of jobs. I come closer to where you think, John, around the number of jobs it creates, the economic impact it would have, the tax revenue it would generate from states that this pipeline touches. And as we talk about creating higher paying jobs, people are going across the border from South Dakota to North Dakota because the jobs are paying, first of all, they're jobs and they're paying a lot as we talk about raising and putting upward pressure on wages. So I'm hopeful the White House and others will approve this more quickly than not.
Harold was always more of a right-thinking guy when he was in Congress, didn't you think?
I'm a pro-business Democrat.
It's hard to talk to him without oil coming out of his ears. He's kind of like me.
It is a real competitive advantage for our economy. You look at what energy is a huge input in the cost of doing business in this country, and it's something obviously that every family has to use in their daily lives. So if we can keep that price down, it's good. Since
the OPEC crisis, the embargo in 73, 74, we have been captive to foreign oil. And our children are not going to be captive to foreign oil. And as Harold said, it's not only going to make manufacturing cheaper at home, it's not only going to grow jobs here in America, it's not only going to allow us to compete globally, once again in manufacturing and explode the economy, it's also going to change our foreign policy.
Right.
We are not going, why will we care? What's happening in the Middle East as far as energy policy goes, because Asia is going to be buying 90%, 95% of that oil in the coming decades because we're getting ours here.
Yeah, no, it's a great answer, and that whole the national security component of that is something that it really does tip the scales in a way that lessens the need that we have today and have had for decades now to be very interested in what happens in the Middle East.
So the Middle East piece is important, but really the impact it really has in South America. I think Middle East will continue to have to be involved in ways. We'll have to reorient and reinvigorate how we do it. But Venezuela and others in South America whose policies have been detrimental to us and detrimental to growth in that region of the world won't have the sway internet globally that they do because of what we will be able to do here, which is why we should lift bans on imports here. But the conversation can be much broader. But the main thing is this geographic pivot, the energy renaissance has allowed it to happen. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, no, I'm just going to say for me in 2008, my mantra was drill, baby, drill. Today with XL, it's build, baby, build.
Right.
I mean, that's where we are. I mean, it's the job component. There is the self-sufficiency component for the U.S. is sort of continue its emergence in in a global marketplace as a leader, and certainly to what Harold was saying internationally.
Right.
So I think this puts a lot of pieces on the table. But if I could, I just wanted to shift to something, get your thoughts. We've been talking about the minimum wage and the impact of this debate, particularly on the poor. And I think that a lot of people can't lose sight of, at the end of the day, we're talking about real people who are struggling to get out of poverty. And there are a lot of us who feel, and Joe articulated this for the last couple of hours, that this is really not a shift from the rich to the poor, but a shift within the ranks of the poor. How do Republicans see this argument shaping up? And what is a couple of the pitfalls that we need to be mindful of, keeping in sight the fact that you're talking about real lives, real people who are trying to move out of poverty into something, a little thing called prosperity?
Sure, and I think, Michael, that a lot of us who grew up in jobs, and we had a lot of seasonal jobs when I was growing up. I worked for less than the minimum wage, and I worked for the minimum wage, but they were jobs, and a lot of our young people need those types of jobs. They're entry level. Everybody wants to see people come up the economic ladder, but the bad thing, I think, about that particular policy is, and you mentioned it earlier, Joe, it's kind of economics 101. If you want more of something, you don't normally raise the price. If you want more jobs, you want more employment, you don't raise the price of it. We're having a debate in our own state. It's going to be on the ballot this year to raise it to $8.50, and I think the states are probably in a better position to determine what, in terms of what their economic needs are, to make some of those decisions than we are in Washington.
And by the way, you're talking about raising it to $8.50 with a state that only has 3.2% unemployment. Guess what? I'm just thinking the economy's in a pretty good place to absorb that. If you decide to do that, I don't think you're going to see a lot of job losses there. But going in a jobless recovery from 7, up to 10, that's significant.
Well, it's a big move, and what the CBO said, I know you've been debating it for the last hour or so, really is that it could cost 1 million jobs. And you couple that with the CBO report last week that Obamacare is going to reduce jobs by about 2.5 million. Why would we be putting policies in place that have the potential to reduce the number of jobs when the best way for people to climb out of the economic situation they're in is through a good job? And it strikes me, at least, that we ought to be focused on policies that create jobs, grow the economy, expand the economy. And the CBO studies, both of these two studies, it really have said, and you can argue about the translation of it, but it was pretty clear what they said yesterday could cost up to 1 million jobs.
But isn't it fascinating, though, that two CBO reports come out within a week? Both of them talk about costing anywhere from 2 to 3 million jobs. Of course, the Democrats have gone out, and Harold, I'm sorry, this is one of the rare times in the history of MSNBC where a Democrat's outnumbered 3-1. I kind of like it, I'll be honest with you. So you just endure this, and to our dear viewers at home that have watched the Democratic Hour of Power for the past 7 years.
This is how you feel?
Just enjoy this. Yeah, exactly. Oh, no, I usually feel much worse than that because I'm usually outnumbered worse than this 3 hours a day. But it's almost surreal that we're sitting here talking about two policies at a time when we're having a jobless recovery, when millions and millions of Americans are struggling to get back into the workforce. And we're talking about two different policies that are actually going to cost jobs. We don't know how many, and we can all have a debate about that, but why aren't we debating CBO reports talking about policies that grow the economy, that get people back to work, that understand the best social policy is a job, not a top-down, trickle-down, bureaucratic approach that we're seeing out of Washington right now. It's surreal.
I agree, and I think there's some low-hanging fruit. We mentioned Keystone Pipeline creates jobs, Trade Promotion Authority, which is something that the administration is resisting, or the president's proposed, but the Democrats in the Senate are resisting, are things that create immediate jobs out there. And so let's focus on those things that it's low-hanging fruit. There's bipartisan support for some of these things, but do things that actually bend the curve in the direction of job creation as opposed to small ball ideas that do very little to help anybody's situation in life and cost us jobs.
All right, John, we got to go. They're yelling, but you said small ball. That reminds me, you two guys could take on anybody in the house gym. I got to ask you really quickly, what was the NBA thinking by changing the rules on the slam dunk competition this weekend?
Trying to feel
insanity, right?
I'm a purist. I'm an old school guy. I like the old Jordan Dominique days. I didn't quite understand this.
I didn't get that either.
Still trying to figure it out.
But here's the thing: we were the champs, and I had more assists.
Just throw it out, baby.
He was unbelievable. I mean, the games were to 12.
He's a baller.
He scored 12. I had 12 assists.
Harold and I still hold the title, 2-on-2 championship in the house gym, because I don't think they've done it in a while.
And what's
I think we can still hold it.
You guys could still win it.
I think we might be able to.
All right,
I can
Senator
still throw the
John
line.
Thune, thanks so much. Coming up on tomorrow's show, we have Senator